right, section 5.5 is such a question. How do you find zeros of a function given 1, 0? Okay, we're going to start solving polynomials. Okay, let's take a look back because we're going to be doing some long division of polynomials, which is very difficult. Let's look back to how we did long division with regular numbers. Remember we had, we had 1,500 or 15,025 divided by 5. We say 5. We make this little division box. Does 5 go into 1? No, so we put a little carrot. Does 5 go into 15? Yes. How many times 3? So we do 3 times 5 is 15. Then we subtract those. Bring down to 0. All right. Bring down 0 and bring down those. Does 5 go into 0? No, so we bring it down that again. Okay. Then we bring down the 2. Does 5 go into 2? No, so we bring down another 0. Okay. And then bring down to 5. Does 5 go into 25? Yes. How many times 5? So 5 times 25. We subtract those. And if we multiply 3,005 by 5, we get 15,025. Okay. So remember, we just subtract at the end. Let's look at another one. 3 divided by 1355. Does 3 go into 1 now? Does 3 go into 13? Yes. How many times? 4. 4 times 3 is 12. Minus 1, you bring down to 5. How many times does 3 go into 15? 5. 5 times 3 is 15. That cancels out. Bring down to 5. How many times does 3 go into 5? 1. So we have 451. 1 times 3 is 3. So we have, now, how you guys probably wrote it, there's 2 ways to write this, right? Sometimes you wrote it as 451, and you said remainder of 2. But basically what a remainder is a fraction, okay? What that is really, this is 451, and you're supposed to put the 2 over what you divided by. So it's 451 and 2/3 is what this really is, okay? So I don't know if you ever talked about that in your math class or whatever when you did long division, but pretty much whatever your remainder is, that's what you put over the divisor. So you have 2/3 left with it. Okay. So polynomial long division can't have any gaps when writing each polynomial in standard form, so fill in zeros when needed. Put the remainder on top of the polynomial outside division sign, divisor. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit difficult. Take some practice. So basically what we do is write x squared minus 3x plus 5. We're going to divide it by 3x to the 4th minus 5x cubed. Remember they said you can't have any missing gaps, so there's a missing x squared term. We got to put in plus 0x squared right there. Because there's no x squared term. Plus 4x minus 6. Okay? So then we ask ourselves, basically what you want to do is focus on the first term always. You always want to focus on the x squared. Okay, so how many times does x squared go into 3x to the 4th? Or what is 3x to the 4th divided by x squared? That would be 3x squared. Because if we take 3x squared times x squared, we get 3x to the 4th. But then we have to multiply 3x squared by every single term. So now we got to do 3x squared times negative 3x, which is negative 9x. Okay, and then we have to do 3x squared times 5, which is 15x squared. Now, if you remember when we went to the other one, what did we do when we wrote that underneath? Go back a second. We always subtract it, like we did 3 times 5 and got 15, but then we changed the 15 to a negative, we subtracted. So basically what we have to do in long division is make everything the opposite. So if we go back to our other problem, you have to make all these signs the opposite because that's what subtracting is, making the signs opposite. So we got to make this negative, this positive, this negative. Just cross that out. Make that a negative. Okay, so you make every sign the opposite. Okay, so then we add down. Those should always cancel out. Negative 5x cubed plus 9x. Sorry, that should be 9x cubed. Is 4x cubed. 0x squared plus 15x squared is 15x squared. And then you bring down your 4x. So next one you ask is, how many times does our leading term, which is x squared, go into 4x cubed, okay? And that would be 4x cubed divided by x squared would be 4x. So we're going to put 4x right here. So we do 4x times x squared and get 4x cubed. And then negative 12x squared, because 4x times negative 3x is negative 12x squared. And then 4x times 5 is 20x. Okay? Again, we got to make everything the opposite sign, so it has to become negative, that has to become positive, and that has to become negative. Okay? So if we do that, 4x cubed cancel out. 15x squared plus 12x squared is 27x squared, and 4x plus 20x is, or sorry, 4x minus 20x is negative 16x. Okay. Nope, that's not right. Made a mistake. Let me go back real quick. I knew I made a mistake. Okay, that'd be 4x cubed. All right. And then 0 minus 15, that'd be minus 15x squared. Okay, plus 4x. All right, so then we would have 4x cubed minus 12x squared. And then, because we got minus right there, got to change the minuses. And then 4x times 5 is 20x. Okay, so then we got to change the signs, make that a negative, make that a positive, and make that a negative 20x. Okay, because we got to change the signs of all those. So if we add straight down, those cross out like we had. Negative 15x squared plus 12x squared would be negative 3x squared. And 4x minus 20x would be negative 16x. Then we bring down a negative 6. So last thing we got is, make sure that's all right. Yeah, okay. So last thing we got to bring down negative 6. So how many times we're going to ask us, how many times does negative 3x or x squared go into negative 3x squared? So negative 3x squared divided by x squared would be negative 3. Okay, so we're going to multiply all those by negative 3. So negative 3 times x squared would be negative 3x squared. Okay, negative 3 times negative 3x would be positive 9x. And negative 3 times 15 would be negative 15. So we make those signs opposite. That becomes negative, or that becomes positive. This becomes negative plus a negative, and this becomes positive. So negative 3x squared plus 3x squared cancels out. Negative 16 minus 9 is negative 25x, and negative 6 plus 15 is 9. So our answer is this. Our answer is what's on top, so it's 3x squared plus 4x minus 3, and then plus, always just write a plus right here, all right? And you're going to write this part over what we divided by. Remember we took, on the other one we had 2 over 3, so this one we're doing negative 25x plus 9 over what we divided by, which was x squared minus 3x plus 5. Always put a plus there. It just makes it easier, okay, if you always just put a plus there. It's the same as when we went through here and we put the 2/3 right here. That's like plus 2/3, except for we didn't write plus 2/3, okay? Same thing here. We had the remainder of 2, so we did 2 divided by 3 and put that at the end, okay? This time we had negative 25x plus 9 over x squared minus 3x plus 5, and we put that at the end as a plus, okay? So always just put a plus so you don't have to worry about the negatives or anything like that, okay? I know that's difficult, not easy, but that's how you do that, okay? Let's do another one by long division, okay? So let's write it out, x minus 2. This time there's no missing gaps. So we ask ourselves, how many times does x go into x cubed, which would be x squared. So we do x squared times x and get x cubed. We do x squared times -2 and get -2x squared. Okay? And then we got to make the signs the opposite. So we got to make that a negative and that a positive. Those cancel out. 5x squared plus 2x squared is 7x squared. Bring down to -7x. How many times does x go into 7x squared? Well, that's 7x. So 7x times x would be 7x squared. 7x times -2 would be -14x. Got to make the signs opposite, so make that negative, make that a positive. Those cancel out. -7x plus 14x is 7x. And we bring down the 2. So how many times does x go into 7x? It goes 7 times. So you have 7 times x is 7x. And you have 7 times -2 is -14. Make the signs the opposite. Make that negative, make that positive. Those cancel out, and you get 16 as a remainder. So the answer on this one would be x squared plus 7x plus 7 plus the remainder is 16 over x minus 2. Remember, whatever this is what goes on the bottom. Okay, and that would be your answer. So that is long division, okay, which is not easy, and you're going to probably have a lot of questions in class about it, and we'll talk about that in class. But the easier way is synthetic division, okay? Synthetic division is what we did the other day with synthetic substitution, pretty much the same thing. It's a lot easier. The only thing that hurts with synthetic division is you can't always use it. It has to be a linear binomial. By linear, I mean x to the first power, and binomial, I mean 2 terms. So like x plus 2 or 2x minus 3. It has to be something where there's 2 terms and it's x to the first power. If it's bigger than x to the first power, then you can't do it. Okay, if it's x squared, like the other ones, that first one we had was divided by x cubed, you can't do that. Or divided by x squared, you can't do that. Okay, but it's a linear binomial, which one of the most of the ones we'll deal with it is we can use synthetic division. It's a lot quicker. Okay, so what we do first is we look at our x plus 3. Okay, and when it says divide by x plus 3, what we want to do is it's kind of like this is in factor form. We want to know what makes that go to 0. Okay, because that's going to be what we put in the box. So in this case, it's -3. So if you want to think about it, always the opposite, you can. So it'd be -3 in the box. And then we'd have 2x, or actually we just use the coefficients. So we'd have 2, 1, -8, and 5. Okay? And then we do the same thing we did the other day with synthetic division. So we bring down our 2. -3 times 2 is -6. 1 minus 6 is -5. -3 times -5 is 15. -8 plus 15 is 7. -3 times 7 is -21. And 5 minus 21 is -16 in the box. Okay? So, what do those numbers mean? How do we use that for synthetic division? Well, we took an x cubed and we divided by x. So basically, every one of these is going to have 1 less x than what we started with, x cubed. Okay? So when we divide x cubed by x, we're going to end up, this is 2x squared minus 5x plus 7 plus, this is our remainder in the box that's left over, okay? So then that would be plus -16 over our original, what we divided by, x plus 3. And that would be the answer. Again, synthetic division is a lot quicker, okay? But it only works with a linear binomial. If it's a linear binomial, you definitely want to do synthetic division. Probably don't want to do long division because it takes a lot longer. It's a lot more complicated. Let's look at another one, okay? We got x plus 3, so what's going to go in our box is -3. And then our coefficients are 1, 4, -1, -1. Okay, so we bring down our 1. -3 times 1 is -3. 4 minus 3 is 1. -3 times 1 is -3. -3 minus -3 is -4. Negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12, which makes 11. Okay? So, now we have our answer. Remember, we took x cubed and we divided by x, so we're going to have 1 less x. So x cubed divided by x is going to be 1x squared plus x minus 4. Remember, this is our remainder, plus 11 over, what was it, x plus 3. And that would be your answer. Okay? You always got to take one x away from, if you start at x cubed and you divide by x, it's going to be x squared. You have to start at x to the 4th, divide by x, it's going to be x cubed. Okay, so when it says factor, given that x plus 2 is a factor, basically it wants us to break down the problem, okay? So we're going to use synthetic division the same way. So given that x plus 2 is a factor, remember we're going to use the opposite. So what makes x plus 2 go to 0 is negative 2. Okay, and then we're going to write our coefficients. We got 3, negative 4, negative 28, and negative 16. Okay. So also when they say x plus 2 is a factor, that means that we should get a remainder of 0. When we get a remainder of 0, that means the factor goes in perfectly, goes in evenly. Just like if we divide and 10 by 2, it goes in equally 5 times. There's no remainder. So we're going to do long division. Bring down our 3. Negative 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. Negative 4 minus negative 6 is negative 10. Negative 2 times negative 10 is 20. Negative 20 plus 20 is negative 8. Negative 2 times negative 8 is 16. And that gives us 0. Okay? So notice how we got a remainder of 0. That means that x plus 2 was a perfect factor of the given one. So when we write it in factor form, we're going to rewrite it. When it says factor, we're going to rewrite it as x plus 2. That was our original factor that we changed to synthetic division. We changed to negative 2, but we rewrite it in factor form as x plus 2. Again, we started at x cubed, and we divided by x, so every x is going to be less. So this is going to be 3x squared minus 10x minus 8. Okay? I don't know if it says factor completely. Can we factor this one? Let's see if we can keep going. Do AC method. Negative 24, that adds up to negative 10. Anything with that work? Negative 12 and 2. That works. Negative 12 times 2 is negative 24. Negative 12 plus 2 is negative 10. So we can rewrite it as, I'm just going to leave this. I'm going to drop this down at the end. Write as 3x squared minus 12x plus 2x minus 8. Okay? Now you can factor by grouping. Factor out of 3x and you're left with x minus 4. Factor out of 2 and you're left with x minus 4. So when you rewrite it, you have 3x plus 2, x minus 4, and then we bring down our other one, which is x plus 2, and now we've completely factored this problem. And all we needed was one factor to get it started, okay? So that's kind of how they want us to go about that, is completely factoring it. Now it'll take some practice getting used to. If you have questions class, you can stop tape or we can go through that. Okay, so again, given that x minus 4 is a factor, so what makes x minus 4 go to 0 is 4. So we have 1, negative 6, 5, and 12. So we bring down to 1. 4 times 1 is 4. Negative 2. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Negative 3. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. And surprise, surprise, it's a factor. Okay? So now we can rewrite it as in factor form. We bring down this, rewrite it in this original factor form, which is x minus 4. Again, we divided x cubed by x, so this is going to be x squared minus 2x minus 3. Okay? And then can we factor x squared minus 2x minus 3? That's there's factors in negative 3 that add up to negative 2. Negative 3 and 1. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. No x squared in front, so we don't have to do the long way. We just do x minus 4, and then x minus 3, and x plus 1. And that would be completely factored. Okay? So, basically what they're saying is if you have one factor on a polynomial, you can use breakdown to a quadratic. And because we did a bunch of factoring in chapter 4, we should know how to factor a quadratic or an x squared. All right, so this one, now it's saying find a zero. So it says solve. When it says factor, we leave it in factor form, for instance. When it says solve, okay, they're saying -2 is a zero, basically. Okay, so if -2 is a zero, we don't have to rewrite that in different form. With this f -2, we just we use that in the box. Okay, and we write out our coefficients. We got 1, 2, -9, -18. Okay. We bring down our 1. -2 times 1 is -2, which gives us 0. -2 times 0 is 0, which gives us -9. And -2 times -9 is 18, which gives us 0. Okay. So when we rewrite this in factor form, it's a little tricky. Okay, we're going to rewrite this, and we can rewrite this in factor form. Just, you don't really have to. We already know that -2 is one of our answers. Okay, but we can rewrite it in factor form. So again, x plus 2 is -2 in factor form. Just going back and forth. Okay. Remember, we did. This is like an x. We divided x cubed by x, so this would be x squared. Okay, notice how there is no x term because it's 0, so we don't have to worry about an x term, but there is a number term, it's -9. And we're solving for 0, so we're going to equal this to 0 right here. Okay, I actually probably should have done that earlier and put this equal to 0, put a 0 right there, but that's fine. So x squared minus 9, remember, is the difference of 2 squares. So we can factor that as x plus 2 and x plus 3 and x minus 3. Because remember, difference of 2 squares, take the squares, and now take squares and subtract them. So our 3 answers are going to be -2, which I guess you don't have to put. It says find the other zeros, so you don't need to put that, but if you do put it, I'm not going to count it off. And then you have your 2 other zeros, which is -3 and +3. So the difference between whether they say whether factor or find zeros. Find zeros, you're solving it. Factoring, you're leaving it in that parentheses form. Okay, so do this before you leave class on your paper. Again, we'll stop it and we'll practice some more on this if we need to, which we probably will. And if you have any questions, just email me.